Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and as a writer myself, I totally understand the desire to draw literary inspiration from the previous works of the past to make your work more polished, more endearing, and just more flushed out overall. That is definitely a reasonable thing to do. However, when you do it in such a way that when you say that's your inspiration, but you can't actually make an honest to God comparison with the end product that you created, it just comes off as pretentious and a last minute, oh, we're super smart. Whereas the actual product does not reflect the so-called inspiration that you believe that you have presented to the world. That is the case here with The Last of Us, with Kathleen. Apparently, the showrunners for The Last of Us, Neil Druckmann and Craig Manson, have come out and said the inspiration for Kathleen as a character was Madame Defarge from The Tale of Two Cities. Now, Dickens is one of my favorite authors. I read most of Dickens for the first time when I was 9. I am very familiar with his works, more so Great Expectations than Tale of Two Cities, but I'm very, very much familiar with his work. And they are not comparable characters whatsoever. The only thing that they have comparable is they're female leaders of a post-revolution society or ringleader of a small group within that society. That's about it. Character-wise, intelligent-wise, motivation-wise, none of it actually seems comparable whatsoever. That's why this is a problem when you say that this is a narrative influence on your writing. Because if it's not clear, if it's not more than just superficial aspects, it comes across as just last minute, retroactive, oh, we're really smart, aren't we? This is the equivalent of a 5-year-old drawing something in crayon and saying, this person, this stick figure looks like a human being. So it's obviously inspired by Homer's Odyssey, and it's just as thought compelling as it. And that's what comes across in the Neil Druckmann, Craig Manson interview on the Last of Us podcast put out by HBO. Now, I have this article here from CBR that puts it together. The Last of Us reveals its newest villain's literary roots. Apparently, she's inspired by the Tale of Two Cities, Madame Defarge. It's not her whatsoever. At least Madame Defarge was actually intelligent. She had an intimidating factor to her and absolutely the necessary requirements to have people follow her. The basic tenets of confidence and intelligence to have people follow her. And she had a way of speaking that inspired violence out of people. That's an important aspect. Even if you're not actually intelligent, a good orator can come across as a great leader, whether or not the intelligence behind it matches what we see presented to a mob of sorts. But that is not what Kathleen was presented as either. She's just constantly, oh, is it dead? Oh, I'm gonna go shoot the doctor now because I'm evil. She's incredibly soft-spoken, mousy. She constantly says like pauses, asks questions to other people that are very, very basic questions. She doesn't come across as intelligent. She kills one, if not her only doctor. It's incredibly a poor comparison to be made between the great literary villain of Madame Defarge and Kathleen. It's not a comparison that I would have made because it makes your villain worse by comparison. Because if that was indeed, if you are telling the truth and that was your narrative inspiration for this character, you failed so completely that it makes this character worse in retrospect because of this revelation. If it's just, yeah, we made her up and yeah, she's kind of shallow, but whatever. But instead, you come out and say, she's based on this incredibly three-dimensional character written by one of the greatest writers in human history, and we didn't even manage to cast a single iota of the intelligence that made Madame Defarge so intimidating. And that's the big thing. Madame Defarge was intimidating, despite the fact that she wasn't a physical adversary for the main characters of Tale of Two Cities. She was so intimidating and so well spoken that it made total sense why she was running this group and why she was feared to the degree she was. And her famous, image of her is her knitting just beneath the gallows of the guillotine and just enjoying the pure bloodshed that was happening during the French Revolution. Now, I will admit, the beginning of the episode with the initial chaos of episode 5 showing the mob taking over Fedra was an interesting French Revolution comparison, but that is just pure chaos extras type stuff. The actual writing, there's very little narrative depth comparisons between the two characters whatsoever. They are arguably very, very dissimilar in every meaningful way whatsoever. The only comparable aspects is women in revolutionary style civilization kind of leader like. That is the barest similarities that they have. Everything else is vastly different. Madame Defarge was actually intelligent. This woman is not intelligent whatsoever, and she's not intimidating whatsoever. There's no way that this woman would be inspiring the conflict that Madame Defarge did, or Kathleen supposedly did within the story. This all just comes across as pretentiousness from the writers and the showrunners, as if they're saying, oh yes, we were totally inspired by one of the greatest literary works of the last few centuries, and that makes us smart. Very similar to Glass Onion being revealed to be just all stupid and dumb, but that somehow makes Rian Johnson smart. The fact that he wrote a dumb story means that he's actually super duper smart. That's what this feels like to me to a certain extent. This entire article is a massive fluff piece from the CBR, of course. And, oh my god, I can totally see the narrative comparisons to be made. You're so smart. You're so very, very smart, Craig Manson. And according to this fluff piece, the showrunners believe that Tale of Two Cities provides the rich moral fabric as the tyranny of the monarchy gives way to the tyranny of the mob during the terror, and its antagonist has the right qualities for a proper update. Of course, they're updating it for a modern audience as we come to know and love the phrase from Hollywood, but the problem with this is, yes, you're trading in monarchy for the mob. It's a very overdone trope, which can be done good in certain situations, but it's very overdone and cliche. There are a ton of cliches in this adaptation that a whole lot of people seem to be ignoring, but this is another example of a cliche. But a rich moral fabric, yes, Tale of Two Cities has a very interesting dynamic because the mob has some justification behind what they're doing, motivation-wise. In practice, though, everything they're doing is horrifically awful, and that is absolutely rich moral fabric, but that doesn't translate over into The Last of Us in any way, shape, or form. You don't actually explore any of these things. You don't actually explore the character of Madame Defarge. You don't actually explore the character of Kathleen. Again, this is just incredibly a superficial understanding of Tale of Two Cities and a superficial inspiration from Tale of Two Cities. You're just like, yeah, a crazy lady in revolutionary style environment, and it's super thought-provoking, isn't it? It's like, no, we got nothing on Kathleen. We got absolutely nothing on her character besides she's whiny and stupid and her brother died and that somehow made her in charge, which would imply that the revolution has a style of monarchy as well, that it passes within the bloodline, that somehow made her in charge for no reason whatsoever. It doesn't actually make sense, and this is only making the story worse in retrospect because this pretentiousness that they're trying to portray in this interview just is revealing how inept they are at writing. If you had this great of an inspiration, you should have been able to write a good episode, even if you were a mid-tier writer. But the fact that the barest inspiration from Tale of Two Cities supposedly inspired this very thin episode means that you don't understand even something like Tale of Two Cities, that you don't understand the basic precepts of the things that you're talking about in this interview. And it's really revealing them to be who they truly are and not talented writers. In my opinion, at least in this adaptation, these two writers have proven themselves to not be good at adapting this story or producing this story or making a good television show. And just saying, oh yeah, we're inspired by classic works doesn't suddenly make it good. And episode 5 is a perfect example of that because episode 5 is the dumbest episode with the weakest plot and the most contrivances and the most insanity, the shallowest characters, and just overall the worst episode. So in this one, out of all of them, saying, oh yes, we're totally inspired by Dickens, doesn't somehow make it smartly written as it seems like they wanted to believe. Whether or not this is true, whether or not she was truly inspired by this character, or if it was retroactively included into their marketing tour, it doesn't help. It doesn't help this story whatsoever. And Kathleen is but a shade of what Madame Defarge was. She has none of the intimidation, none of the intelligence, and is just not a good character, let alone a good leader and a good villain. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon.
Hey, yo, are you feeling what I'm doing up in here? Oh, I know you are. Do you miss all the good, compelling stories that we used to get back in Hollywood that they ain't putting down no more? I know you missing it. So check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues, baby. Book 1, Down in Flames. Book 2, Apocalypse Then. These are currently on sale. What are you waiting for? Get your hands on them. And we got Book 3, Kill the Dark, is coming down the pipeline. Just wait for all the good stuff that's dropping. You ain't gonna be disappointed, fam.